Come on in, guys. My name is Anthony Bertolo. For over 2 decades, Survivor has fascinated viewers with its sporadic gameplay, exhilarating challenges, jaw-dropping moments, and, most importantly, its colorful contestants that make the show so enjoyable to watch. However, as with any show that has been on the air for such a long time, it is expected that new twists would be implemented into the game to keep it fresh and exciting. While most of these twists have had a positive impact on Survivor and have comfortably ingrained themselves in the fabric of the show, others have actively broken the game and have unfairly resulted in the demise of numerous contestants. While many of these lousy twists are retired after one occurrence, others keep coming back and rear their ugly head. So this begs the question, can this reality television titan fix these outrageous twists? We'll find the answer on Survivor Twist Tweaks. For the entirety of its run, the game of Survivor involved players voting each other out to progress further in the game. This would often come at the cost of some of the more favorable players of the season. Many of these players are most often taken out a day before the final 3, where they could have easily won the votes from the jury if they were sitting there. While seeing your favorite contestant getting eliminated is a hard pill to swallow, it is an essential part of the game that makes Survivor what it is. However, that all changed in the show's 35th season, Survivor Heroes vs. Healers vs. Hustlers, when, at the Final Four, a brand new twist was introduced which eliminated the traditional vote in favor of a forced fire-making challenge. In other words, the contestant who won the final immunity challenge of the season would choose one person to take with them to the final 3, while the remaining 2 players would compete in a head-to-head fire-making challenge where the winner becomes the last finalist while the loser is eliminated. While this twist was meant to ensure that the more deserving players had a better chance to reach the end, it ultimately foiled the integrity of the game and by disrupting the very foundation of Survivor. The game revolves around the vote as the only method for sending players home. It gives the players a sense of power knowing that what they write down on a piece of paper could ultimately change the direction of the game. Plus, the vote encourages contestants to develop social bonds and alliances that can shift the control of the game in their favor. In other words, the social strategy balances out the physical gameplay of challenges. However, when the vote gets replaced at the Final Four with a forced fire-making challenge, it puts a dent in the social game and heavily favors contestants who primarily base their game around winning challenges and playing hidden immunity idols, thus hindering the socially superior players. Unfortunately, what was meant to be a positive change to the format that would assist the fan favorite ultimately made it more difficult for socially strategic players to win the game. Since its induction, forced Final Four fire-making has been seen in every season and has shown no signs of slowing down. So the question remains, can Survivor tweak the forced fire-making challenge to make it more suitable for the players involved? We'll find out after this break.
You know right away when a car is good. And you really don't know until you drive it around a racetrack, especially a supercar. And the R8 really just took to it. The thing that's interesting about a high-rev V8 engine or a V10 engine is every 1,000 RPMs it changes in tone and octave, and it's almost like a symphony going on behind you, and you're controlling it with your right foot. And then you put in the Quattro drivetrain, which means it's an all-wheel drive car, but in the R8, it's biased to have most of the drive towards the rear wheels, typically about 80% or so. And so you have a very rear-wheel drive feel and balance with the vehicle, but you also have the security of an all-wheel drive system. And that means if it's inclement weather or just how the car approaches its limits are very easy to understand, to decipher, and therefore control. You know, you get the hair standing up on the back of your neck, and once that thing crests over 8,000 RPMs, it's an incredible experience.
Just as we discussed, the forced fire-making challenge majorly impacted the endgame of the seasons that followed. It made the possibility of a challenge dominating or idle playing threat to get to the end more likely, and made it more difficult for the socially dominant players to get the upper hand. However, there is one way that Survivor can tweak the forced fire-making challenge to make it a better twist, and the answer lies in the retired Final 2. In the original format of the final two, the remaining two contestants would plead their case to the jury as to why they deserved to win the game and the $1 million prize, as opposed to a final three stating their case in more recent seasons. Out of the 15 times the final two format was used, only once did it result in a finalist receiving 0 votes. In contrast, out of the 25 seasons that have implemented a final three so far, only 5 of those seasons featured all 3 finalists receiving jury votes. There have even been a few times where only one finalist received every vote from the jury, while the other 2 received none. Now, one of the main reasons why the final two was retired was because host and executive producer Jeff Probst noticed that on numerous occasions, the player who won the final immunity challenge would often vote out the more favorable player and take a less worthy contestant to the final two, beating them handily in a jury vote. So the way this can be counteracted is that the forced fire-making challenge took place at the final 3 instead of the final 4. Both finalists would earn their way to the final 2, one by winning immunity and the other by winning the fire-making challenge. Both contestants could be considered worthy because neither of them was essentially dragged to the end by the other, and thus the jury could view both finalists as equally deserving of winning the game. Plus, there is one round of voting with no hidden immunity idols in play before the fire-making challenge, considering the last time idols could be played is at the final 5. Thus, making it impossible for a player to simply idle their way to the final 4 and then win the fire-making challenge to reach the end and potentially win the season based on that type of gameplay alone. Thus, this change would also level out the playing field and allow for some of the other contestants to possibly gain the upper hand and vote out the big threat should they lose the immunity challenge at the final 4 with no idol to bail them out. Overall, while it is disappointing to see some of our favorite players fall just short of reaching the end, there is no excuse to harm the integrity of the game for their sake. The result of the game should not come down to a player coasting through the game by constantly finding and playing hidden immunity idols until the final 5, while also being saved at the 11th hour with a forced fire-making challenge at the final 4. It is a disservice to the contestants that are playing socially strong and worked hard to develop that social superiority. Hence, tweaking the forced fire-making challenge to take place at the final 3 instead of the final 4 would allow for both finalists to earn their spot at the final 2 and prevent a player from idling all the way to the final 4 and then winning the fire-making challenge to reach the end. That's all the time we have for today, folks. Tune in next time for another episode of Survivor Twist Tweaks. I'll see you then.